Picture yourself strolling with your eyes shut, unaware of the path ahead, yet having faith that every step takes you closer to your destined place. Walking by faith means believing without evidence, trusting amid uncertainty, and holding on to God even when His plan is beyond your understanding. Today, you might be facing a challenging moment, filled with unanswered questions, closed doors, and tests that feel insurmountable. There are no limits, yet it is God who guides you. Move forward with conviction, not just what you see. Remember, you are not alone, you are not overlooked, and everything is still under His guidance. What appears to be a dead end in His grasp is merely the start of a miracle. When every aspect of your life appears to contradict the promises made to you, when fear grips you tightly and doubt tempts you to give in, hold onto this truth. God is still at work even when it feels invisible. His faithfulness transcends your understanding. His love is independent of your feelings, and His plan remains unwavering in the face of what appears impossible. Now is the moment to let go of your fears, embrace trust, and move forward boldly, even without a clear view ahead, knowing that divine guidance is with you. Embrace your journey with unwavering belief. Have faith in God, even in moments of uncertainty. Before you start, please leave a comment saying, "Lord, I trust in you, even if I do not understand. Guide me." Embrace your faith in God. Join me as we embark on this journey together. 2 Corinthians 5, verse 7, for we walk by faith, not by sight. Faith serves as the unwavering assurance of what we hope for and the steadfast conviction of what remains unseen, forming the very foundation upon which a believer's life is constructed. The believer's life is constructed to navigate the uncertain journey. The light that shines in darkness is not reliant on what can be seen, but rather on unwavering trust in God, His power, and His promises. Much like Abraham ventured into the unknown, guided solely by divine whispers, we too journey forward without sight, yet our faith carries us through the twists and turns of life's circumstances. In moments when pain obscures our vision and the future feels uncertain, it's often said that hope seems elusive. Yet, to believe without seeing is a profound act of trust and surrender to the one who remains steadfast and true. Jesus addressed Thomas, stating, "You have believed because you have seen me." Fortunate are those who embrace faith without the need for sight. Belief transcends what we can see. It rests on the unwavering assurance that God is exactly who He claims to be. Moses placed his faith in the unseen God as he raised his rod over the Red Sea. David faced Goliath with unwavering trust, armed with just a wave and 5 stones. The woman with the issue of blood believed that merely touching Jesus' mantle would bring her healing. They didn't wait to see before they believed. They believed first and then witnessed the glory of God manifest in their lives. The Apostle Paul, inspired by the Holy Spirit, conveyed that the Christian life transcends sensory perception, rooted instead in heartfelt belief. Despite enduring persecutions, shipwrecks, hunger, scourging, and imprisonment, he refused to be swayed by appearances or challenges, choosing instead to anchor himself in faith in Christ. He understood that what is visible is temporary, while the unseen is eternal. It was faith that sustained him through his darkest hours, empowering him to write letters that continue to fortify the church today. As Peter stepped onto the water, his eyes were fixed on Jesus. However, the moment he turned his attention to the wind and the waves, fear took hold, and he started to sink. Faith is all about trust. When we rely on God rather than our circumstances, we can advance with confidence. When we let circumstances shape our trust, we open the door to doubt and uncertainty. In moments of desperation, Jesus extended his hand, demonstrating that even when our faith wavers, His unwavering support remains to uplift us. We are invited to embrace trust, even when the path ahead remains unclear. The Israelites encircled Jericho, driven by faith transcending mere logic. Gideon's confrontation with the Midianite army, armed with just 300 men, was a testament to unwavering faith rather than mere human tactics. Faith is about following through when the path is unclear, holding on to belief when hope feels distant, patiently anticipating the right moment, and finding peace in promises when everything around you suggests otherwise. Noah, driven by faith, constructed an ark even before the first raindrop fell. Through faith, Sarah became a mother in her later years. Through faith, the walls of Jericho crumbled. Through faith, God's people triumphed over kingdoms, executed justice, received promises, silenced lions, extinguished raging fires, evaded the sword's edge, found strength in their weakness, and displayed might in battle. Faith transcends mere belief in God's existence. It embodies a lifestyle that aligns with that belief, guiding our actions, steps, and movements in accordance with His Word. While the world insists that seeing is believing, a higher calling invites us to believe in order to truly see. We don't merely follow the sights before us. We are guided by the deeper truths our soul recognizes. Faith drives us to advance when all is revealed. Faith encourages us to take a moment, brings hope when everything seems bleak, and strengthens our resolve. In moments when we feel overwhelmed, it's essential to remember that faith remains steadfast. Those who place their trust in a higher power will find strength in the face of adversity. When fear threatens to grip our hearts, let us hold onto these powerful words. We walk by faith, not by sight. Let us move forward with unwavering determination, for our confidence lies not in our circumstances, but in the promises that have been made to us. Join us until the very end of time. Verse 2. Psalm 37, verse 5. Dedicate your path to the Lord and place your trust in Him. He will take action when the situation seems unclear. In times of uncertainty and challenge, we are guided to place our trust in a higher power to illuminate our journey. It's not merely about seeking His assistance. It's about fully relinquishing our path into His care, confident in His actions. To entrust is to surrender, to release control. It's a declaration. Lord, I choose not to battle alone any longer. Embrace my life and fulfill your purpose within it. The journey isn't simple, as we often crave immediate answers, yet we are called to trust in the process. He will make it happen. Abraham placed his trust in God as he departed from his homeland, stepping into the unknown without a map or assurances. All he possessed was the promise of God, and in that faith he was guided, blessed, and granted descendants when the odds seemed insurmountable. Moses placed his faith in God as he confronted Pharaoh, as he raised his rod over the sea, and as he guided the people through the wilderness. It wasn't his strength or his skills, it was the divine working through him. When we let go of relying solely on our own strength and place our trust in God, He skillfully paves the way, creating paths where none existed before. David, the author of this psalm, grasped this truth deeply through his own experiences of persecution by Saul. He faced the harsh reality of fleeing and hiding in caves, all while his enemies appeared to be perpetually one step ahead. He placed his trust in God, refraining from seeking vengeance on his own. He chose not to wield his power to interfere with divine plans. Instead, he patiently waited and entrusted his path to God, who, in turn, elevated him to kingship at the right moment, granting him victory over his challenges. How often do we hold tightly to our own solutions, striving to solve everything with our own strength, only to find ourselves exhausted, frustrated, and without answers? God invites us to release our burdens, to entrust everything to Him, and to have faith that He will act. But trust doesn't equate to passivity. It's not about waiting idly for things to magically appear. It's about moving forward in obedience, adhering to His word, and doing what's right, even when immediate results are elusive. It's about progressing with the confidence that God is at work, even when we can't see the path ahead. Consider Joseph, who trusted God despite being sold into slavery, wrongfully imprisoned, and spending years in obscurity. He could have succumbed to despair, doubt, or bitterness, yet he chose to commit his way to God. And in return, God elevated him to governor of Egypt, using him to save countless lives and restore his family. God never forgets those who place their trust in Him. It might appear as though nothing is unfolding, that everything is moving at a snail's pace, but rest assured, He operates in His flawless timing. In the Garden of Gethsemane, as He confronted the impending cross, Jesus uttered, "Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done." Jesus, in His divine nature, entrusted His path to the Father, who then brought Him back to life. He bestowed upon Him the name that surpasses all others. His sacrifice brought salvation to all of humanity. If Jesus placed His trust, how much more should we extend our own trust? While we often seek swift answers and instant resolutions, God guides us to embrace patience and trust in His timing. For 40 long years, the Israelites journeyed through the wilderness, steadfastly making their way to the Promised Land. For years, Hannah poured her heart into prayer, and finally, her fervent hopes were rewarded with the gift of Samuel. Elijah placed his faith in the promise that God would bring rain after enduring 3 long years of drought. In today's world, placing our trust in God means finding peace in His sovereignty. It involves embracing the belief that He is inherently good, that His plans surpass our own, and that even when we struggle to comprehend our circumstances, He is actively at work, regardless of the challenges we face or the many closed doors we encounter. How often do we stumble when we place our trust in God? Perhaps today you find yourself in a moment of uncertainty, unsure of your next steps, burdened by worries. God invites you to surrender it all to Him. Trust in His love. He is faithful, His power knows no bounds, and His grace is sufficient. When you place your faith in Him, you will witness His hand at work in your life, opening doors, restoring what's broken, and making the impossible possible. Rely on Jehovah, not on your own logic, fears, or the opinions of others. Trust in Him, for He never fails, is never late, and never forsakes His own. There is no doubt, no conditions, and no chance of error. He will fulfill His promises. Just trust and allow God to work in your life, as stated in Psalm 23, verse 4. Though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you will be with me, your rod and your quiet. They will breathe me into the valley of the shadow of death is not just a physical place. It is a moment, a season, a circumstance where everything seems dark, where fear wants to take hold of the heart, where despair whispers that all is lost. But the psalmist confidently declares that even in that valley he will not fear, not because the valley is not real, not because the danger does not exist, but because God is with him. God's presence makes the difference between fear and confidence, between panic and peace, between defeat and victory. David knew what it was like to face dangers from his youth. He had to fight bears and lions while tending his father's sheep. Then he had to face Goliath, the Philistine army, the pursuit of Saul. He lived in caves. He fled for his life. He went through moments of anguish, but in all of that he knew that God was with him. No matter how dark the valley was, the light of God's presence sustained him. The valley of shadow of death can be an illness, a crisis, a betrayal, a loss. It can be the pain of a broken heart, the uncertainty of the future, the weight of a trial that seems endless. But God's promise is clear. You will be with me. It doesn't say, maybe it doesn't say, sometimes it doesn't say. If you behave well, it's a certainty. God is with his children at every step, in every battle, and in every dark night. Jesus himself, he journeyed through a valley shrouded in darkness in Gethsemane, perspired drops of blood, called out to the Father, bore the immense burden of the world's sins upon the cross, confronted abandonment, endured pain, and faced humiliation. He understood he was not alone. He recognized that the Father had a purpose, that death would not prevail, that darkness would not extinguish the light, and on the third day the tomb stood empty. God's triumph was absolute. Though fear sought to take hold of your heart, the strength of God revealed its true might. Keep in mind that you are never alone. The storm is not yours to weather by yourself, and you don't have to rely solely on your own strength to navigate the valley. The divine accompanies you. His presence offers solace, his love empowers you, and his guidance envelopes you in tranquility. The rod symbolizes his protection and authority over adversaries, while the silent one signifies his guidance, direction, and correction when we stray. He is the good shepherd, unwavering in his commitment to his sheep, defending them from danger and leading them to safety. Peter stepped onto the water, his eyes fixed on Jesus. Yet, when he turned to the wind and the waves, fear gripped him, and he began to sink. Similarly, in the valley of the shadow of death, focusing on the storm leads to despair. However, when we turn our gaze to Jesus, we discover peace amid chaos. God doesn't guarantee a life free from dark valleys, but he assures us that we will never walk through them alone. Joseph faced the betrayal of his brothers, endured slavery, and suffered unjust imprisonment, yet through it all, God was by his side, elevating him at just the right moment. Daniel was cast into the lion's den, but God shut the lions' mouths, delivering him unharmed. The 3 Hebrew youths were thrown into the fiery furnace, but God walked with them in the flames, and they emerged without even a hint of smoke. No matter how deep the pit, how fierce the storm, or how towering the giant, God remains sovereign, faithful, and powerful. His presence is sufficient to sustain us, providing the strength we need to rise when we feel we can't go on. Perhaps today you find yourself in a valley, feeling the shadow of death looming, paralyzed by fear, convinced there's no escape. But take heart, God is with you. This is not the conclusion, nor is it your downfall. This moment is not your final chapter. His guidance and quiet presence support you, his love envelopes you, and his grace is sufficient. Continue your journey. Hold on to your faith. Continue to have faith, for beyond the valley lies triumph. Beyond the darkness shines the light. After the tears comes happiness. And when you reflect on your journey, you'll realize you were never alone. Divine presence accompanied you every step of the way. Jeremiah 17 verse 7. Fortunate is the individual who places their faith in Jehovah and whose confidence is rooted in Jehovah. Trusting in God unlocks the door to a fulfilling life. It transcends mere belief in his existence. It's about fully relying on him, finding peace in his unwavering faithfulness, and placing our faith in the essence of his life. Embrace the hope found in his promises. Blessed is the one who remains steadfast, not swayed by the sights, feelings, or opinions of the world, but anchored in the truth of God's word. For God is unwavering. He does not lie, falter, or change. His faithfulness endures through every season, trial, and battle. Trusting in God transcends mere emotion. It is a resolute choice, a commitment to stand firm. Have faith despite the odds stacked against him, Abraham placed his trust in God's promise that he would become the father of nations. Despite the discrepancy in their ages, Moses had unwavering faith when God instructed him to raise the rod over the sea. Despite the seemingly insurmountable odds, Joshua placed his trust in God's promise that the walls of Jericho would crumble simply through the act of marching and blowing trumpets. True to his word, God delivered, much like a tree firmly rooted by streams of water, unafraid of the heat that may come. This is the individual who places unwavering trust in God. The surrounding desert holds no power over him, nor does the looming drought pose a threat to his spirit. His roots are firmly anchored in God, who is a constant provider. His word serves as a wellspring of life, his presence offers shade in the scorching heat, and his love is the refreshing water that satisfies every thirst. However, some place their confidence in humanity, in their own strength, and in their understanding. The Bible describes them as akin to the broom of the desert, rootless, unstable, and devoid of hope. When the storm arrives, they are easily swept away. In times of crisis, when the world feels unstable and wealth seems uncertain, human promises may falter. Yet one truth remains steadfast: God is unchanging, unwavering, and eternally sovereign. David placed his faith in God as he confronted Goliath, armed with nothing but a single wave and 5 stones. Lacking armor, an army, or any advantage, he relied solely on his faith. With God by his side, victory was assured, demonstrating that true trust in God is not determined by our possessions, but by the presence of the divine beside us. The true essence lies not in the might of the warrior, but in the divine power that stands with us in battle. Peter had faith. When Jesus stepped out of the boat and walked on water, his focus on Christ allowed him to conquer the impossible. However, as soon as he turned his attention to the wind and the waves, he started to sink. Trusting in God means focusing our attention on him, allowing us to progress fearlessly. However, when we allow our circumstances to shape our faith, we succumb to doubt and fear. The 3 young Hebrews placed their faith in God when faced with the threat of the fiery furnace. Uncertain of their fate, they boldly declared, "Even if he doesn't save us, we will not bow down to your statue." True trust isn't contingent on whether God fulfills our desires. It's rooted in the understanding that he remains sovereign, that his will is flawless, and that his plans surpass our own. He has delivered them, accompanied them through the flames, brought them out unscathed, and in doing so, his name has been glorified. Having faith in God doesn't imply a life free from challenges. Rather, it assures us that in times of difficulty, we are never alone. Even when everything appears to fall apart, our belief stands strong and unwavering. Despite losing everything, he proclaimed, "I know my Redeemer lives." Despite being imprisoned, Paul lifted his voice in joyful praise. Daniel found himself in the lion's den, yet he rested soundly, assured of God's presence by his side. Fortunate is the individual who places their trust in Jehovah rather than in wealth. Indeed, fortunate is the individual who proclaims, "Lord, I place my trust in you, even when the path is unclear, and I have faith in your unwavering support, even when I cannot comprehend, instead of depending on their own wisdom or strength. No matter what the world may say, my faith lies in you." It's the faith that conquers challenges, the trust that opens doors, and the stability that supports believers amidst uncertainty. Let go of your worries and embrace this powerful truth. God is always trustworthy. Regardless of the challenges you encounter or the magnitude of your struggles, remember that God remains sovereign. He is your sanctuary, your source of strength, and your sustainer. His love is unwavering, his grace is sufficient, and his faithfulness knows no bounds. Place your trust in him, and you will experience blessings. Trust in Him, and you will witness His glory manifest in your life. Verse 5, Hebrews chapter 10, verse 23. Let us remain steadfast in our declaration of hope, for He who promised is faithful. This journey is not without its challenges. When the world attempts to challenge our beliefs in moments of challenge, hardship, and doubt, our hope can appear to diminish. Yet, we are encouraged to stand firm, to resist the pull of fear or uncertainty, for our hope is anchored not in our perceptions, not in our situations, and certainly not in our own abilities. We place our trust in God, in His promises, and in His steadfast loyalty. He is the one who has made a promise. This is not just any word, nor a simple promise, but the word of God, who is incapable of lying. Abraham endured a long wait, spanning many years. Even in the face of an impossible promise of a son, Abraham held firm in his belief, unwavering and resolute, never allowing discouragement to shake his faith. Even though logic often pulled him away from belief, it was God's unwavering faithfulness that brought him to a place of fulfillment. Joseph envisioned a future filled with extraordinary achievements. Before he reached his destiny, he faced betrayal, slavery, and injustice. Everything appeared to be spiraling in the wrong direction. Yet he held on to hope, maintained his faith, and trusted in the divine timing. Ultimately, the promise was realized. He was elevated, became a source of salvation for many, and received blessings beyond imagination. The Israelites endured 400 years of slavery before experiencing their long-awaited deliverance. Moses confronted Pharaoh repeatedly before witnessing the miraculous parting of the sea. Joshua and Caleb journeyed through the desert for 40 years before reaching the Promised Land. What united them was unwavering belief. They remained steadfast, never losing hope, fully aware of God's faithfulness. Paul, despite facing imprisonment, shipwrecks, persecution, and beatings, continued to preach, trust, and proclaim the hope of glory. His suffering did not deter him. He was confident that the God who promised to be with him would sustain him until the end. He declared, "I know in whom I have believed, and I am sure that He is powerful to guard my life." Staying resolute is a choice made each day, a testament of belief and a dedication to the divine. It requires faith to believe in the absence of signs and to offer praise before the arrival of what is hoped for. Claim victory even while the flames of battle rage on, for it is the faithful who uphold their promises. Peter stepped onto the water, his eyes fixed on Jesus. Yet, when he turned to the tumultuous wind and waves, he began to sink. This mirrors our own struggles when we allow our circumstances to dictate our hope. God calls us to trust not in what we see, but in His promises, for He is the unshakable rock, the steadfast anchor, the fortress that stands firm. The 3 Hebrew youths faced the fiery furnace, refusing to bow to the king's statue. They could have compromised, thinking God would understand, but they stood firm, unwavering in their faith. God was with them in the fire, bringing them out unharmed, their faithfulness shining brightly for all to witness. In His most agonizing moment on the cross, Jesus had the power to summon legions of angels for His rescue, yet He remained steadfast. He did not stray from His purpose. He stood resolute, fully aware that the Father's will was flawless. Through His unwavering obedience, we are granted salvation, life, and hope today. The journey of faith is filled with challenges. We will face fierce winds, storms, and times when it feels like the world is against us. However, when our hope is anchored in God, we remain steadfast, refuse to surrender, and protect what He has promised us from the enemy's grasp. When you find yourself feeling a lack of faith today, as if the wait stretches endlessly and the promise feels distant, take a moment to reflect. This God remains steadfast. He is unchanging. He has not overlooked his promises to you. His word endures. His plan is actively unfolding. His love remains unwavering. Resist the urge to let doubt divert you from your divine purpose. Don't let fear rob you of your promise. Hold tightly to hope, for the one who made the promise is unwavering, and what has been spoken will come to pass. In the 6th verse of the book of the prophet Isaiah, chapter 26, we find a profound truth. Thou shalt keep in complete peace him whose mind perseveres in thee, because he has trusted in thee. The peace that God offers transcends worldly understanding. It is not swayed by circumstances nor shattered by trials. This peace is enduring, a steadfast presence that fills the heart even amidst life's storms. It does not imply a lack of challenges, but rather a firm assurance that God is in control. It is not merely the tranquility of a calm sea, but the confidence that regardless of the tempests we face, Jesus is with us in the boat. Those who remain steadfast in their faith, who focus their thoughts on him and resist the pull of fear and anxiety, will experience a perfect peace. This is not a fleeting or partial peace. It is complete, sufficient, and eternal. To embrace this tranquility, one must cultivate trust, rooted in the knowledge of God, faith in his word, and assurance in his unwavering faithfulness. Peter walked on water with his eyes set on Jesus, but when he turned his attention to the wind and the waves, fear took hold, and he started to sink. When we shift our attention away from God and begin to dwell on our problems, this is the outcome we face. Anxiety arises when our confidence wavers, and fear intensifies when we lose sight of our beliefs. However, when we focus on Christ, peace reigns in our hearts, no matter the circumstances surrounding us. Daniel found himself in the lion's den, yet he rested peacefully, not due to the lion's lack of danger, but because he had unwavering faith in the greatness of his God. Despite being imprisoned and scourged, Paul and Silas lifted their voices in song, not due to the comfort of their surroundings, but because their unwavering trust was placed in God. True peace isn't found in the lack of challenges. Rather, it emerges from the presence of the divine even when faced with them. In the midst of a raging storm, Jesus lay peacefully asleep in the boat, while his disciples were gripped by fear, convinced that death was imminent. He took a moment to rest, and when they stirred him awake, he effortlessly commanded the wind and the sea, bringing forth a serene calm. The peace that God bestows upon us is truly remarkable, provides a tranquility that enables us to find rest amidst chaos, a serenity rooted in the assurance that God is sovereign, that his plans surpass our understanding and his power is unmatched. The world often chases peace in fleeting pursuits, wealth, success, temporary pleasures, and human connections, but these are all ephemeral, destined to fade. Genuine peace resides solely in God. Only he can truly satisfy the void that the world cannot fill. Only the Spirit can soothe the tempest within. Only it can bring peace to the weary heart. Hannah, Samuel's mother, cried and suffered because she could not have children, but when she carried her burden to God, when she poured out her heart in prayer, her countenance changed. She had not yet received the answer, but she already had peace, because peace does not come when God answers. It comes when we decide to trust him, when we stop carrying the burden alone, when we let go of our worries and rest in his love. The enemy wants to steal our peace, wants to fill us with anxiety, fear, doubt, wants us to focus on what we don't have, on what we don't understand, on what hurts us. But God calls us to fix our mind on him, to remember his faithfulness, to meditate on his word. Because when our mind is on God, our peace is unbreakable. It doesn't matter however strong the storm, however dark the valley, great be the trial, God has promised to keep us in complete peace if we persevere in Him, if we trust in His Word. If we choose to believe in His faithfulness, peace is not a passing feeling, it is a decision to trust. If today you feel that anxiety consumes you, that fear paralyzes you, that uncertainty overwhelms you, turn your gaze to God. He is the Prince of Peace. He is your refuge, your strength, your rest. Do not let worries rob you of what God has given you. Persevere in His presence, trust in His love and peace. That peace that surpasses all understanding will fill your heart and mind in Christ Jesus. Verse 7, Book of Psalms, chapter 56, verse 3. In the day that I fear in you, I trust. Fear is real. Everyone in some way at the moment we have felt fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of the future, fear of losing what we have, fear of failure, fear of disease, fear of loneliness. But in the midst of fear, God gives us an answer. Clearly, trusting Him does not say that we will never feel fear, but that when we do, we must trust, because trusting God is the only answer against fear. David wrote these words in a moment of he was surrounded by enemies, persecuted, with no safe place to hide. He could have fled. He could have given in to despair, but instead he decided to trust because he knew that God had not abandoned him, that God was greater than any enemy, that God was in control. Peter was afraid. When the waves roared around him as he looked at Jesus, he walked on the waters, but when he focused on the storm, the fear sank it. So it happens to us when we take our gaze away from God. Fear suffocates us, doubt paralyzes us, uncertainty consumes us. But when we reset our trust in God, we find security, we find strength, we find peace. Fear does not mean lack of faith, but it does show us where we are putting our trust. If we trust in our strength, in our abilities, in our circumstances, fear will dominate us. But if we trust in God, even if we feel fear, we will go on because God is bigger than any storm, stronger than any giant, more powerful than any trial. The 3 Hebrew boys were threatened with being thrown into the fiery furnace. If they didn't bow down to the king's statue, any normal person would have feared for their life, but they said, "Our God can deliver us." But if He doesn't do it anyway, we won't bow down. That's true trust. No, it is only to trust when we know that God will deliver us. But to trust even when we do not understand His plan. Jesus in Gethsemane felt anguish. His soul was troubled until death. But in the midst of His suffering, He prayed, "Father, if it is possible, pass from me this cup, but my will not be done, but yours." It was not the absence of fear, it was the decision to trust in the Father. And because of that trust, the cross did not, it was the end, if not the beginning of the greatest victory. God told Joshua not to be afraid or dismayed, for Jehovah your God will be with you wherever you go. Joshua had reason to fear. Moses had died, and he was to lead the people to the promised land. He would face battles, giant challenges, but God did not tell him to avoid fear, but to trust in His presence, because fear may be present, but trust God must always be stronger. When the disciples were in the boat and saw the storm, they thought they were going to die. Jesus slept peacefully without fear because He knew that His Father was in control. And when they woke Him up, He just spoke and the sea calmed down. That's right, God. When we trust in Him, the storm may roar, but His word still has authority. Especially Paul and Silas were beaten and imprisoned unjustly, but rather than being afraid, they sang praises because they trusted God, not because things were easy, but because God showed up in the prison, opened the doors, and broke the chains. Because when we trust God, He works powerfully even in the darkest moments. If fear comes at you today, keep in mind that God is with you and that He is not alone. No matter how serious the threat, God is greater. No matter how uncertain the future is, God already has it in His hands. No matter how strong the storm, His voice keeps calming the seas. Fear will come, but trust in God is our answer. It's not about not feeling fear. It's about deciding to trust, because God has never failed, never lost a battle. He's never left his children unanswered on the day. I fear, I trust him, and that trust is what gives us peace, gives us strength, gives us victory. Verse 8. Gospel according to St. John, chapter 14, verse 27. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. I do not give it to you as the world gives. Let not your heart be troubled or afraid. The peace that Jesus gives is not like that of the world. The world offers a momentary peace based on circumstances, in the absence of problems, in external stability. But the peace of God goes beyond what we see, beyond what we feel. It is a peace that remains in the midst of the storm, that sustains when everything collapses, that guards the heart even when there is war around us. Jesus spoke these words to his disciples in a difficult moment. He knew that he was about to go to the cross, that his followers would face fear, persecution, uncertainty, but he assured them that his peace would be with them, a peace that nothing and no one would have to do with them. It was not the peace of a trouble-free world, but the peace of a heart that trusts in God. Peter experienced this peace when he was in prison, chained, awaiting execution. Instead of being distressed, he was sleeping. How is it possible to sleep in such a situation? Because his peace did not depend on circumstances, but on the presence of God, and God worked. He sent an angel. He opened the prison doors, and Paul and Silas set him free. They were beaten, imprisoned, bound in the darkest dungeon. But instead of fearing, they began to sing hymns of praise, not because their situation was easy, but because the peace of God reigned in their hearts, and that peace unleashed the power of God. An earthquake shook the prison, the chains were broken, and they were free. When Jesus was in the boat with his disciples, a storm broke out. The waves were beating, the wind was roaring, and they feared for their lives, but Jesus was asleep. Because the peace of God does not depend on the storm, but on trust in the Father. When he was awakened, he simply spoke, and the storm calmed down. That is the peace he gives us. No matter how strong the storm is, his voice is still authoritative. The peace of the world is based on having money, success, stability. But all that is fragile, one day it is, another day it vanishes. Peace of God is eternal, it is firm, it is real. It does not mean that there will be no problems, but it does mean that God is with us. In the midst of them, Daniel was thrown into the lion's den, but he had peace, not because the lions were harmless, but because he knew that God was in control. The 3 Hebrew youths were thrown into the furnace, but they had peace not because the fire did not burn, but because they knew that God was with them. Jesus told us not to be troubled in your heart or be afraid, for fear steals peace, anxiety fills us with doubts, takes away our joy, prevents us from resting in God. But when we trust in him, when we remember his faithfulness, his peace fills our hearts and strengthens us. Hannah cried for years because she could. Not he had children. But when he took his burden to God, his countenance changed. He had not yet received the answer, but he already had peace, because peace does not come when everything is resolved, but when we trust in God. Joseph went through betrayals, injustices, years of waiting, but he did not lose peace because he knew that God had a purpose, and in the end he saw the hand of God in everything he had experienced. If today you feel that the anxiety consumes you, that problems rob you of tranquility, remember this promise of Jesus. My peace I give you, it is not a weak peace, it is not a temporary peace, it is the peace of Almighty God, a peace that sustains, that renews, that transforms. Do not allow your heart to be troubled. Do not let fear rule your life. God is with you. His peace is yours. His love sustains you. Trust him, and you will receive a peace that surpasses all understanding, a peace that nothing and no one can take away from you. Verse 9, first letter of the Apostle Peter, chapter 5, verse 7, casting all your anxiety on him, because he cares for you. Anxiety is a heavy burden, a weight that steals peace, that fills the mind with worries, that makes the heart restless. But God did not create us to live burdened with worry, dominated by fear. By that is what he tells you as Cast your anxiety on me. Do not keep it. Do not carry it alone. Do not try to solve it with your strength. Leave it in my hands because I take care of you. Peter knew what it was to worry. He walked with Jesus, but he also faced fears, doubts, failures when Jesus went to the cross. Peter denied knowing him 3 times because he was afraid, but after his restoration, he understood that true peace is only found when we surrender our burden to God. So he wrote these words because he had learned that God is faithful, that God cares, that God sustains. Jesus spoke about anxiety and said, "Do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear, because God cares for the birds. He feeds them, he sustains them, and we are worth much more than them. The more he will take care of us, the more he will take care of us." For us, Martha was anxious, worried about many things while Mary was sitting at Jesus' feet, and he said to her, "Martha, Martha, anxious and troubled, you are with many things, but only one thing is necessary. It is not about doing more, solving everything, trying to control everything. It is about resting in the presence of God, trusting in his love, knowing that he is in control." Paul, he wrote from prison, "For nothing, be anxious if your requests are not known before God in all prayer and supplication with thanksgiving." He was not in an easy situation, but he knew that God's peace is greater than any problem. It is not a matter of ignoring difficulties, but of trusting that God is greater than them. The people of Israel were in front of the Red Sea with the army of Pharaoh behind, and there was no way out. They were filled with fear, anxiety, despair, but God told them through Moses, "Do not be afraid, stand firm, and see the salvation of Jehovah," and the sea opened. Because God always has a way out, always has a plan, always has control. Hannah could not have children, and she suffered for it. She cried, she was distressed. But one day she carried her burden to God. She prayed with everything in his heart, and when he finished, the Bible says that his face was no sadder. He still did not have the answer, but he already had peace, because when we leave the burden on God, he fills us with his peace. He reminds us that he takes care of us. Jesus in Gethsemane felt such great anguish that he sweated drops of blood, but in the midst of that burden, he prayed and gave his will to the Father, and after that prayer, he got up strongly with determination, because he had put everything in God's hands. Enemy wants to fill us with anxiety, worries, fears, wants us to feel alone, with no way out, no hope, but God tells us, "I'm careful of you. You don't have to carry it alone. You don't have to solve everything. Just trust. Just give it alone. Rest in my love." If today you feel that the burden is too heavy, if anxiety steals from you peace, if worries don't let you sleep, listen well. God cares for you. It's not a possibility. It's not a maybe, it's a certainty. He loves you. He sustains you. He'll never let you cast your anxiety on him.